back to another video. Today I'm here with Laura, and she brought a Mustang over. It was a Mustang makeover project. Anyways, instead of me telling the story, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you brought her here and what challenges you're having?
Yeah, for sure. So Matanui here was my Extreme Mustang makeover pick for 2023, and when I brought her home, she was just a little more challenging than most Mustangs that I've worked with in the past, and I knew that, but I spent a lot of time trying to get her ready for the saddle. When we did put a rider up into the saddle, and we do a two-person start, and I was the grounds person, she just exploded and threw off the rider. So I felt that she's not going to be ready for the Extreme Mustang makeover. Let me pull her out of the event, adopt her, give her the next year to just, you know, get used to her life.
Yeah, and that's great, and that's kudos to you, because a lot of people just send them back, and then, you know, they're kind of just going to sit around for a long time and some crummy pens. So it's great that you're giving her a future.
And as a result, what I did is I do a lot of Liberty, and so I added her. Well, I started doing Liberty with her just as a way to help her just relax and get used to her new life. And I added her recently to my Liberty team of horses, and this is only her third time off of my property since I brought her home. So she's doing really well.
She's doing great.
So, but a week ago, I decided time to start her under saddle again, and it didn't go well.
So tell us what happened.
So I prepped her with everything, with the saddle, and I've done the rope around her barrel.
So you thought she was all ready to ride?
She was all ready to ride. Thought things were looking good. She's pretty relaxed. She's calm. She was even calm with the second person. That I always do that two-person start, and I use a lot of positive reinforcement. She was looking pretty good. 3 times my saddle person getting up into that saddle, and we do it slowly, but 3 times she flew off. She learned how to fly.
Wow.
Yeah, we bought bull riding protective equipment.
Wow.
So that's, you know, she looks great
You
right now.
Didn't have a camera going either, huh?
No, we didn't have a camera going. Unfortunately, I had no expectations that we were going to see the same Mott that we saw a year ago.
And so she came off, and then you kept putting her back on.
We kept putting her back on, and we slowly got further and further, and then she went from looking like this to maybe a little tension, head up just a little bit, paying attention, and then all of a sudden, explosion.
All right. Yeah, so that's unfortunate. You know, I always tell people 50% of training is trying to teach horses what you want them to know. And the other 50% is trying to not teach them things we don't want them to know. Because once they've learned a habit of basically she's learned, get afraid with the rider on and then buck them off, and then probably got some levels of relief, or her feeling more comfortable after that happened. And so, and so that means we really got to cross our T's and dot our I's and make sure all the preparation is there, so that there's not would be a 5th incident with that. And so we're going to do a bit of evaluation with her and see if we can find some holes in her preparation. We kind of have like a basic colt starting checklist, and mine is more thorough than a lot of people's because I have no desire to get bucked off. And most of the time I'm preparing colts for other people to ride. So the gentler I get them, even if I okay, I could ride now, but I'm going to continue going through my checklist to make sure they're kind of safe for more of anybody to ride, and it just lowers the risk of something bad happening. And so I really try to get 10 to 20 rides on them before I really take any sort of risks where I maybe skip a couple steps or don't do some extra things. That way I'm leaving myself a little bit of room for error there. And so with her, we want to really prepare things as well as possible so that there's not a 4th list. So we're going to be really thorough with everything. But yeah, let's get into it, and let's find out kind of what some things that you've done, and then I'll take her from you and see if I can find anything myself.
All right, perfect.
All right. So if you guys haven't heard of the Patreon page, it's where I have my whole horsemanship program. We post a new video there every Wednesday, and once a month I do a fun monthly challenge, and we do giveaways at the end of that for whoever participates. And you can ask me questions on there. So if you're not on there, make sure you get yourself on there, and we'll leave a link in the description below.
When I first was working with her last year, she just anything in the environment, and that's what you're talking about. That was
so it's like, to me, I'm not even going to saddle a horse that can't just handle the flag coming up. Like, to me, part of the flag is using this as a tool to get them prepared for the saddle.
Okay.
And this is why I was saying it as a trick versus
sure.
they are patterns, but there's some tricks because like she'll do it under these perfect these conditions of it, like the trick that she knows, but she's not really understanding or reading us as much as the pattern or the knowing the trick.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense.
Cool. I'm glad that doesn't bother you when I say that.
Doesn't bother me one bit. That's why I'm here. So
and this is also why horsemanship ends up being like a religion. Like you believe what you believe about it, you know, really, really strongly. And I've dabbled in pretty much everything you can do with horses, from driving them to liberty to you name it. And what I've landed on for me and my business, and what I'm doing is, for a long time I was just training horses for the general public, helping them give them a starting colts, giving them a good foundation, fixing some problem horses that would come through, preparing horses to be safe on the trail, or getting them prepared to go to another trainer for finishing training and reining or cutting or something. And so I've got thousands of horses under my belt of experience with foundation training. And that's what I'm saying. Even though she can do really high level liberty, right off the bat, to me, she's missing a lot of the like fundamentals of just giving a horse a solid foundation to be successful at other things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, there's, you know, we talk about where, you know, if we're focused on dressage, we work on dressage things. If we want to have a horse that's a foundational trail riding horse, we want to focus on something different.
So this is kind of an example if she got specialized in liberty before she really had a foundation for all things. Now again, if that's all you're going to do with her is liberty, it's like, well, that's obviously working really well. A lot of times there can come up with some holes there. It seems like you've done enough groundwork in other ways too, to like the trail loading went well, bringing her to a new place went well. Sounds like she's good for the farrier and the vet and stuff, like, you know, all those things. But then where we got stuck is the riding part. You know, and so for me, if I had a Mustang with me, I'm going to focus on that foundation stuff before I would go, even if I thought they were going to be a liberty horse, preparing them for liberty, I'm going to still focus on these fundamentals as kind of just a sequence. Now, the good news is the training that you've done with her is helpful to getting her to understand and look for the answers to things. Where the problem comes in is it wasn't sufficient foundation and gentling and all this other stuff. Foundation is the best way to say it, to have her prepared to ride, but we went ahead and put riders on and then they come off. And that's going to make her much more difficult to start now than if that had never happened. Like that would be the ideal. So kind of the home point for the next horses that you train that I would like you to take home is giving them that foundation of all these extra things that we're going to end up doing with her, is going to be would, in my opinion, be a good system or protocol to do with all the horses, you know. And you could do these and then still include the liberty training within the same session, but it would just be getting that good foundation in there.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, I will be using more tools to...
Have you ground drove her at all?
No, I really haven't. No.
I don't always ground drive horses before I start them under saddle, but if they are a particularly sensitive, kind of goosey, reactive horse, ground driving is one of the first things I add to the and then list. My friend Jake has a say of like, here's he doesn't call it the fundamentals, but here's the fundamentals, and then there's the and then list, like if we need some extra things.
Like
and ground driving
one more piece to it
is the first thing on my extra thing. Another thing would be ponying them. And then one of the things that I would have also included in the beginning foundation list would be bareback mounting. And I asked you about this before, and you said, no, I haven't done that. But to me, that could be like sitting on a fence and getting them to just come underneath you while you're sitting on top of a fence, getting them used to a human being above them. Ponying them helps with that, like getting them, you know, where you're riding another horse and bringing them around. So they're just getting used and exposed to somebody being above them. Or even just as simple as teaching them to stand still at a mounting block, and then you climb up on the mounting block and wave over them, lay over them.
That I have, well, I haven't laid on her, but I have her come up to a mounting block, and I have put my arms on the other side and just, I have bounced on her up and down a little bit, but I haven't laid on her.
Yeah. Now, there might be some confusion on her part with how you do things and then what I'm doing with her.
She's always been one that I've always said she's kind of likes to play a few games where if she can avoid it and just keep moving her feet, she'll do that forever.
Yeah.
She's always done that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But
I think that's more what she's doing.
But what I would suggest though is that the things I'm doing, even though they may not be the cues or whatever for the Liberty moves, I'm only going to do the things that I think are just very, very fundamental to, like, these are all the got tos for getting ready to ride. Like, to me, she's got to learn to read energy versus intention. And one of the things I find that's interesting, when I start waving it like this, she connects, she's not paying attention to my intention, but she's connecting it, in my opinion, a little bit to like, oh, I'm supposed to stand still here now. Like, so she tried to stand still out of like, we've taught her to stand still.
Yeah.
But she's not connecting it. She's connecting, that's why I say it's a trick. She's connecting it to the like specific, and this is hard to describe, but she's connecting it, in my opinion, to the trick that you taught her to stand still.
Sure.
And I would rather her connect it to, I'm standing here and being calm, so I want you to be calm. Does that make sense? Like,
active body language versus passive body language, and
yeah.
versus this is something that we've rehearsed over and over and over.
Exactly. Yep. Because then it's just, there's confidence, yields, and patterns, and everything we do with our horse ends up being a pattern.
Okay.
And I very much try to do deliberate patterns that I want them to know, and that's a lot of what you're doing with her at Liberty, is teaching her the different patterns that you want her to follow. But that's where it can be tricky, no pun intended, where they start connecting it to that and not to our reading us. And she's a great example, in my opinion, of a horse that knows a lot of things, but isn't always connecting her yields and movements to the human's intention, or like what we're thinking about it at the moment. So I'm just asking her to walk around me, but with a little bit of a partial disengagement. And I'm tapping her with the stick, but imagine if you're riding her and you don't have spurs on and they lean on your leg, well, you're probably gonna have a little bit of rhythm in your leg, asking her to move off of it. And so they have to tolerate this pressure here just a little bit. But you can see she's a little sticky there. There we go. So you see her doing a partial disengagement in her hindquarters. But I'd like it to come a little bit easier off of just the suggestion. There it is. So you got a couple of steps there. There it is. And part of why I do this a fair bit on the ground is when I'm riding, I'm going to teach them a couple of recovery strategies that I want them to be really good at. One is going to be bending them down with one rein, but the other is going to be bending them down to a circle where I just walk this circle. And so I would like her to get to where this is just very easy for her. She just flows into it. She finds a lot of relaxation there. We had a little lick and chew there. She was thinking about what we're doing. So I kind of, because of the dynamics of having a halter and lead rope on, tapping her with the stick and string, I've kind of signed her up to needing to make a decision to do something different. Where again at Liberty, they can kind of just run around and we'll wait until they're in the spot and then we'll decide to switch or something like that. And you're kind of picking your battles a little bit more when they're set up to do the thing you're asking for. Where this is like, she's got to get a little bit more committed to saying yes kind of now when I'm asking for it, because the pressure is not going to go away until she changes her mind. There we go. There we go. Very nice. So it's good that she wasn't too committed to that, so that's good. So you can see I got the rope around her neck, and then I'm just going to flip it around her hindquarters here. And I'm just going to let her wear it. So that's all she needs to do with the rope right now. Super. So I can't really release it anymore without it getting tangled around her legs. But that's what I'm looking for, is for her to just wear the rope, walk around, be comfortable with it. And then she has to get also to where I can pick up a feel and it doesn't mean anything. So this is, again, this is a confidence building thing, not a yield. I'm not looking for her to yield her hindquarters right now. I'm looking for her to just be comfortable with something touching her and her wearing it. So I'm trying to keep just the same steady feel on it. Now I'll release it, so I'm getting dizzy. Because another way to think about it is, like, if they truly trust us, we should be able to present them with something new and they're okay with it right away. So another way to say all the things I'm trying to say here is she's not fully tame yet. There's still some spots in there where she only goes to her prey animal instincts, and she doesn't totally lose it, but to me it's a pretty minor thing compared to some of the harder things we could be doing. These are fairly easy, and so if she's going to react to it, and this is true for any horse, like it could be a 20-year-old dressage horse that's won Grand Prix, and if they can't walk around with a rope touching them, I'm going to say that horse isn't fully tame. And so when I'm training a young horse, a young foal or a Mustang or any horse, one of the first things before I teach them any like specific tricks is I'm trying to get them just tame. And I take that very serious as kind of one of our responsibilities, because we're setting them up to be safe in all the different human environment things we ask them to deal with. Hauling in a trailer, not escaping out of the fence, eating out of a hay net, being safe for the vet and the farrier. Those are all things that are basics that every horse needs to have in there, just to be kind of safe for themselves. In other words, I know of Mustangs that got put down because they got injured before they got tame, and because they weren't able to get the vet work they needed when they didn't have the facilities like they do at the Mustang pens, it didn't work out for the horse, and those horses had been at a person's house for many months at that point, So now we'll do the same thing on the other side. It's interesting, she's the first horse that I've worked with that had so much liberty training, but still was missing some of these fundamentals. I've worked with there's quite a few like ranch type horses that they'll ride and go do their job ranching, but as soon as you change the pattern of what they're used to, they really have a pretty big issue. And it's gotten really popular to buy ranch horses at sales. Everybody thinks of the ranch horse as the epitome of like a really well-trained horse. Yeah. And they are on a ranch when they're being rode 6 days a week, for several hours a day. But when you take that home and you put the horse home and you put it in a stall and feed it really well, ride it once a week, you're probably going to have your hands full, because a lot of those horses aren't like highly trained. They're used to a pattern of going and doing the job, and they're rode long enough they get a little bit tired while they're doing it, and then they kind of settle in. But as soon as they're not tired and they're fresh, does that make sense?
Yeah,
no,
it makes perfect sense. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. But so I've had several of those, like many, probably hundreds of those that I've helped give them a little bit stronger foundation where they're a little safer for, somebody to trail ride on or whatever. This one is the first horse that has such high level liberty training, but yet is missing some of these fundamentals that I would call them.
Right. And it's interesting. It's waking me up a little bit, because I've never had a horse quite like her. I've done extreme Mustang makeovers before, and I've been able to do what I've done as fundamentals with desensitizing and you know, slapping a stick on the ground with the string and rubbing it all over them. I have taken a plastic bag and tarps and all kinds of things. Yep. But of course, it's been a while. We've been focused more on Liberty now at this point because that's been our main focus.
The underlying theme behind what she's doing needs to be based on her reading the human better.
Yeah.
Not just the tool. I'm using these tools to try to get her to read me better, and just realize that I do a lot of weird things that she needs to be comfortable with, but it's like they're all friendly exercises, not they don't have to be scary.
Right.
But it's a better result if the horse learns to read the human more than people just looking at the fact that she's bothered by a lariat rope. It's like, oh, the lariat rope's magical. No, it's just getting her to read the human a little bit better.
Right.
This is where closed circles are a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
There we go. Good. Since we got the rope here, and see, like even here, when I ask her just to move off my intention, like now my intention is asking her to go, she kind of misses that because it's not the same exact cue that you're using.
Sure.
But I would like her to learn to read our intention a little bit more. So like I try to use my intention before I use pressure. And so when you show them both sides of the coin, that sometimes intention means move your feet and sometimes it means relax, depending on our level. And that's pretty natural to horses. They're designed to read, is the lion hungry or is it just laying around? Like, can I go to the water hole and drink or not?
Right.
And so they're very naturally perceptive to it.
So if I do all of this and she gets used to it, how would should I have somebody else try to do it too, do you think? Or just to read the intention?
No, it's more like it's her. Because again, if you're riding, and so let's say that I'm right and she doesn't read energy versus intention at all. Well, now you put a rider on, just them being up there, she has no idea if that's positive, negative, if they're going or not, because she's not thinking about it, paying attention to their intention at all.
Okay.
She's just reading the fact that now somebody's on me, and that's different. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so they have to, so by using a few things to try to focus on teaching them energy versus intention, it lends itself to the idea that if the rider's quiet and calm, the horse should be quiet and calm. If the rider brings their life up, okay, now we should move on. But if we're using other things to get her to move and respond and not the human's intention, then there's kind of a gap there, and then she doesn't really know when there's something new.
Okay.
So the problem comes in more when there's something new.
Okay.
Again, horses are unbelievably trainable to do what we want, and that's why so many different types of methods work. But at the end of the day, that was kind of the hole that she had, is she wasn't quite confident with a human being on her back, and then she wasn't paying attention to their intention. And this also takes a long time to develop. It's not something that happens overnight, because it's like the highest level of intention is, say you're walking down the trail and a turkey bomb goes off and the horse goes, oh, the human stayed quiet, I can just keep carrying on, right?
Right.
And not react to the big scary thing that just happened. Where most people's horses, like, they're trying to be calm, It's like this phrase, like people are told, if you're calm, your horse will be calm. It's like, That would be great, but that's not true. You have to train them that if you're calm, for them to be
read
calm.
my energy.
Yeah, and so that's what would make me the most nervous if I was sitting on her right now. I'd be like, oh, she's not on the ground here. She's not reading that intention to move or to be quiet.
Right.
And so, you know, we're left with only, you know, tapping, spanking to get her to move, and then she's not connecting that with the riders and, you know, energy coming up and down. I want to take a quick pause to thank the sponsor of today's video, obsbot AI tracking camera. So this is an obsbot AI camera, and what's cool about it is you can put a box around yourself and it'll track you anywhere you go. It uses AI technology, and you can give it hand signals without even having to get off your horse to start and stop the camera, to zoom in and out, things like that. So this is a really neat little deal. Cool little setup if you're needing to film yourself without any help around. So if you guys are in the market for a camera to use, go ahead and check out obsbot cameras. I'll leave a link in the description below. So I'll show you a couple binds here. So this is a real easy one. And now notice I'm holding the rope over here because I'm not going to let her turn, because when you did it, she kind of turned when you didn't say turn. I don't want her to turn until I say turn. And so I'll just work this rope here a little bit and just let her wear it and just be comfortable. And then I'll tip her nose away from it here, and I'll take the slack out and then step back. And I want her to find the answer.
Oh, so you're not actually pulling her to find the answer.
No, she released herself.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why this is a tricky video, and most people watching probably are honestly going to not understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I feel like you're having some light bulb moments go off.
I sure am.
But you can't look at the specific like tool I'm using or the thing I'm doing. You have to look at.
Well, it's a difference. I think you're saying I was looking at it as suppling versus confidence. Let her find a relaxed answer to it.
Yes, and that's all there. And so what doesn't matter as much, what are the different yields and binds I put her in? That is secondary to how does she feel about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I need her to feel like she needs to move her feet when I bring my life up here to turn or go and move.
Right.
And I need her to feel like she can stay relaxed even with some other commotion going on when I'm here relaxed.
Okay.
And so if you're not asking for hustle and like, do it now, go like crazy, she needs to stay soft through all those yields and whatever it is you're doing. That's why I say those are secondary to how does she feel about it.
Yeah, that change of directions, I know exactly what you're talking about too, because that's been a tough one with getting her to be relaxed.
It's a tough one for any horse. Anytime a horse changes eyes, they get a little bit weird about it. They feel a little tight. So I have a lot of reverence for when I change eyes on a horse and how I change eyes. From basic of she's standing here, I'm going to be very aware that she thought about blocking me right there when I went to walk. I had no intention, but my body and my energy came over here, and she's thinking about blocking me a hair.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So like even just there, there's a hole.
Yeah.
Like she needs to be able to let us come in here. And so
I never really thought about that. Yeah.
And she's blocking me a hair, I'm going to maintain my position, and she's going to release herself. And that's what I mean is I could try to control her with the halter, or I could wait for her to release herself. I'll show you what I mean by that as soon as she changes. She tries to just subtly block me. There. So there.
See, and I think I've always
there she released herself. Yes. And so it's all these subtle little things, and that's why this is going to be a challenge for you, because you're learning this kind of new level of reading her and leaving her there.
Right.
And she's pretty sensitive, and she's already had some bad experience. So it's going to be a process. You know, it's not going to be a take her home and do this for 5 days and then go ahead and ride.
Yeah.
It's like she almost has to be retrained to a degree.
Okay.
Because, and I'm not saying that because there's anything wrong with the liberty you're doing. That's all great.
Yeah.
She needs to be retrained in the sense of she's not doing these basic fundamental things. She's not reading those and understanding those. And that's why you got to kind of start from the beginning and work your way through it. Now, some things will go quickly and the liberty will feed into that and help that.
Right.
But there's just a lot of holes for when we think about riding her, of like, I'm not going to ride a horse that's not reading my intention and energy and showing me that they're connecting with these things. Because if they're not connecting with these things, I'm just doing it to them. They're going to get scared and buck me off. I'm not that good a bronc rider. like that's what's going to happen. And so I don't need to have that happen to know I gotta go through this checklist. you know,
Right.
because like, again, even something simple as just trying to walk to the other side and have her think about blocking me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
Now, if I cue her to stand still the way you were doing it, let's just test that real quick. So do you give her a cue to
I'll
stand
tell
still?
her to stay, and I usually will put my hand up just for a second, simulating the stop cue.
Okay. So you drop the rope,
Yep.
hand up.
And then
Stay.
just use the word stay.
Oh,
Nope, didn't work for you.
I thought it might work. I thought we had a chance there. I bet if you did it, she would. I'm probably new to her.
I'm sure she would. I think she thought about it for a second with you. I think she did think about it, but then
she did. Then she's like, no, this is different. This guy's different.
This guy's different.
He's not. He doesn't really mean it. He doesn't really mean that cue. But yeah, she's trying to understand. But to me, that's why I say we kind of got to go back to the beginning and work through all of it, because I also want her to understand these, like, what I was going to start doing is just going through the like riding pre-flight checks kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as I'm doing it more and more, I'm just realizing she feels very different to me than how horses that I've been working with feel, because she's not paying attention to those little nuances of how I'm moving around her. But I feel like those are really critical to a successful ride.
Right.
Because I want her reading me and going, oh, he's just, moving around and waving and carrying on, and I don't need to do anything when they do that,
Right.
So let's get into one of the harder ones that this kind of applies to, directly applies to colt starting, is jumping up and down on them. And so I would definitely do this step with her. Now here's where I'm going to use a pattern. I want to release her to doing that. So the other aspect of horse training is this is now a maneuver. Everything else I was just doing with her was exercises. I don't care about exercises. I care about what frame of mind I get the horse in doing those exercises. For a maneuver, I want it to go well. I want the horse to see the maneuver as relief. So an example would be like, let's say trail loading's your maneuver. So I'm going to do something a little uncomfortable with the horse out here. Walk to the trailer, let him rest. Trailer's relief, okay? So I want me jumping up and down on her here to see this as relief. But we're playing chess, not tic-tac-toe. Okay, horses are always playing chess with us. So if I only do this and I just keep progressing it, she just sees this as the pressure tight moment, right? But again, I want this to be the relief. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna yield her hindquarters and ask her to move her feet, which is what she's kind of been wanting to do.
Oh, and then go right into doing that.
And I'll try to put just enough energy that there's a little bit of pressure there.
Same
so
thing
it's
I do
not
with
about the
keeping
work,
them
it's about
laying
the energy.
down.
Now my life comes back down. So she's learning again. I changed my intention.
Oh, yeah.
And now we'll go back to this. And then this becomes a pattern. Because when I'm doing this, I usually haven't saddled them yet. And so I then, if I have run into a sticky spot with mounting, with a saddle on, with putting a pad or saddle on them, if they start not wanting to stand still, I go, oh great, you don't want to stand still, let me help you not stand still. And we start moving the hindquarters. But she knows I'm not going to stop moving her hindquarters until she starts getting sticky feet. So this is a bind. It's like, when I get to this point, I'm testing my training. I've taught them yields, I've taught them to give to pressure, I've isolated getting her to follow feel from her foot, I've isolated getting her to follow, not her specifically, but horses in general. And so I've done all these prep steps, thinking I've got them pretty good. Now I'm gonna test it. This is also strategies I use to fix a horse that's already learned to push through pressure, but it's like, they lead around fine, but if you put them in a bind, they're gonna freak out. Well, this is some of the binds that you gotta practice putting them in. So this one's really easy. I'm putting the rope around her leg, and I'm gonna pull on it a little bit. And see how her first thought is panic?
Yeah.
That's what I'm coming around to, is she doesn't understand pressure as well as she should.
Okay. Makes sense.
Keep in mind, rhythmic motion is pressure to her. But once she learns to read your intention and not the energy of the rhythmic pressure, that's when you got her. But like pretty much every single bind or exposure thing that we've done, she's had a reaction to it at first, and then there she relaxed, so now I'll give her slack there. But these are all things that I'll test them on to find out how gentle are they. You know, because like again, imagine a rider, now you got a saddle on, cinches have built-in pressure being around them. The rider's above them, got their legs on them, and now they're also, somebody's on the ground putting pressure, or somebody's in the saddle pulling and kicking, trying to get them to navigate around. That's a lot going on, right?
Right.
And so if she struggles with some of these basic things, I know she's gonna have trouble with that. I don't need to see that unfold.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes perfect sense.
Now see there, she caught herself and she thought about it, and then she gave her head. So like that's why I say she's a quick study. She figures things out pretty quick.
She does.
It's a little bit
Both
more
good and
about,
bad. She does.
You're gonna just have to expand your list a little bit of colt starting pre-ride checklists, and getting her to understand the differences between those three things of steady pressure, rhythmic motion.
So question for you, just with anything that becomes rehearsed, if I do that, does it become more of a rehearsal of just that particular exercise, like a trick like we were talking about, or does it apply
Not
to...
if they're yield to pressure.
Okay.
Teaching them a trick is a little more about just the pattern. There's not really a yield to pressure. They're just moving their body on a pattern in a position. It's like position oriented. This was not position oriented. This was giving to pressure oriented. It's about where her mind got to.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
It's cool. Well, does that help you out? Give you some more things, some homework to work on?
Helps me a ton, and yeah, I'm really good at doing homework because we spend a lot of time.
Yeah, I can tell you invested a lot of hours into her.
Yeah.
And she seems like a super cool horse. She'd be worthwhile investing the time in. She's beautiful, and
yeah, and I just think she'd
really
make a beautiful riding horse.
Yeah.
A little awkward she is sometimes, just but I think that she can work herself out. Just in her lope, I think her lope's just a little.
And I haven't mentioned it to the YouTube audience yet, but I was invited to participate in the Mustang Magic Competition. So that we pick the Mustangs up around September 6th, and then we compete with them like the third weekend of January, like 23rd through 25th. And so if you guys would like to see me compete in the Mustang Magic, let me know in the comments and say, yes, we want to see you there, and see if we can get some Mustang training videos on file.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, well, thank you very much, Laura, for coming out.
Thank you.
Great working with your horse.
Yeah,
and I'll look forward to hearing how it's going.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks.